What a privilege it's been over the last week to take the essence of Shihuahuacu. Shihuahuacu is one of the most important trees in the Amazon. It rises up to about 60 meters and it provides a lot of the canopy, which is the shade and protection for a lot of the other plants underneath. It's also one of the most overly harvested or forested tree in the Amazon. It's such, like I said, it's such a privilege being able to be in the presence of this plant. So what I did was I was taking this sacred tree essences, Shiwawaku, sacredtreeessences.com. Mimi is the shaman, master shaman. She trained with the Blue Morpho group and became a master shaman there. And now she's got a series of essences. I've done a bunch of them, and a bunch of people on the Facebook group have done a bunch of them too. And it's interesting, they're homeopathic. Now, homeopathic, what I understand of homeopathic, which isn't much, is that it actually contains no plant material. But there's one person I was speaking to was saying to me, well, if it's homeopathic, it doesn't have anything in it. It's complete bullshit. But, you know, when you're dealing with these plants, you're dealing with something very, very distinct. And I can vouch for the power of all of these essences. Shiwawaku is just such an amazing presence. It's majestic. It's ancient wisdom. It's just so wise. It's so wise and so. It's got a personality which is very reserved. It's a very reserved personality, which it's not in your face. You know, what's interesting about it is it's got all of, if not more power than ayahuasca, but it doesn't try and show it to you. It only shows it to you. It only reveals a little bit if you go looking for it. And then it's astonishing. So I've been taking this for the last 7 days, and I've had a lot of experiences with it, and I've also been sick at the same time. So a few different things happened. I guess the first thing, if I can remember, I'll probably forget some of the details, but on the first day I took it, I didn't really feel anything. Now, when I started off, I was a bit worried, because I'm always a bit worried about taking medicines. So I only took 2 drops. Didn't feel anything, or 3 drops the first day. Didn't feel anything until I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I closed my eyes, and I was suddenly, everything went purple. And, I mean, I'd taken the drops in the morning, so this is like hours later. So I closed my eyes, everything went purple, and I started seeing aliens and ants and insects, and it was like all the stuff which is like scary to me. You know, I was like, oh man, no, what have I done? You know, and I'm like, wait a minute. You know, the thing is, over the last year or so, I've got into pretty deep meditation and energy practices. So I kind of deal with a lot of stuff all the time, and I've kind of got little techniques of how to deal with things. So when this came up, you know, I was like, wait a minute, you know, people aren't taking Shiwawaku because they're seeing insects and aliens. You know, I'm like, this is coming from me. It's some kind of reflection of who I am or something. I was like, and so I sent a message out energetically to the plant. I'm like, listen, I don't believe this is what you've got. You know, I think this is like, I think what happens with a lot of these plants is they try and scare you away. It's a lot of what happens when you're working with the Sephiroth in the Kabbalah. Is, you know, you get attacked by demonic figures if you do magic in the Sephiroth, and it's to scare you. It's to scare the unworthy people away. Is what it is. So great. I figured that must be the same thing. So I was like, listen, I don't believe this. I'm not leaving. And I went into like a deep meditation and centered myself in the energy and pushed this message out into this purple energy that was around me. So all of a sudden, out of all this ugly stuff, I saw this little movement in my third eye, and there was a little ant came out, and the ant had a leaf in its mouth, and it started walking, and you know, I'm sort of following it with my consciousness, and it starts climbing and climbing, and I suddenly realize it's climbing a trunk of a tree, and it's climbing, and it's climbing, and it's climbing, and as it gets higher and higher, sunlight starts coming through the canopy, and I'm like, this is more like it. Now we're getting, you know, it's a bit more interesting now. And we get up into the tree and we arrive at the bough of the tree. Now, one of the things when I was doing Tortuga Caspi, which I did a video about, Tortuga did a bunch of lessons with me about plant vibrations and plant chakras and this kind of stuff. So at the bough of the tree, there's a chakra there. And I understand that to be the heart chakra. I might be wrong, but that's what I understood. And so what happened is when we reached the heart chakra, it just emanated this beautiful, just purple energy. It was unbelievable. And I started having these visionary experiences of like baby deer, like in the womb of their mothers, and wolves and foxes and eagles in their, like baby eagles in their eggs. And everything was sort of, I'm thinking Spanish, envuelto. Everything was sort of like ensconced. I can't think of the word in English. Everything was like covered with this purple love. And it was all being incubated by this purple field of love energy, which was coming from the tree. And it was a really beautiful experience. And then as I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, I'd forgotten all about the scary stuff, you know. And then all of a sudden, this huge light came out of the bough of the tree, and it was Jesus Christ came out. And I was like, and you know, the funny thing is, this is, you know, a lot of people go on about like, well, Jesus was black or Jesus was white or, you know, God's a woman or a man or whatever. You know, the truth is that these energies are way beyond those human classifications. You know, you can fight about it all you want, but I mean, it's stupid. So the message which comes across is that Jesus is one ray. Jesus is one part of the ray of love. Now, you see what happens, and I've spoken about this in other videos, is that there's these giant rays from God, which are infinitely powerful. And what we see tiny little parts of that, and what we understand as love is a tiny part of that ray. And Jesus, or Christ, let's just call it Christ. I think it removes the historical aspect, which confuses everybody. But the Christ energy is part of that ray. Now, there are other energies which are part of that ray too. Shihuahuaco is part of the ray of energy too. And Shihuahuaco is kind of like the plant representative, at least in the Amazon. It's like a guru of love in the Amazon. And so obviously this was a reasonably overwhelming experience, you know. And that was as just before bed, and it was like 30 minutes of this just like wow, incredible experience. So that was like my first experience of the plant. So I was impressed. Not that Shiwawaku was trying to impress me at all with anything, but it certainly gave me the confidence to think, okay, you know, maybe I can work with this plant a little bit, you know. So over the next few days, I've been taking various drops. Now, the interesting thing is at the same time, I suddenly became interested in Norse magic, right? So like the whole rune system and the mythology of Odin and Thor and all that stuff, right? It's a little bit cold here in the house. The mythology of Odin and Thor, and so I've been reading some books on this, and of course, what happens is, you know, I go in the morning about 4. I usually wake up at 4 in the morning to meditate, and so as I go into the sort of energetic meditation, a lot of times what happens is the stuff I've been thinking about in the day sort of gets filtered into my energy work. Now, if you've been following my videos, you'll know that I've been tending towards doing like a tantric sort of life, they call it life energy, sexual energy, sort of tantric energy work, which doesn't involve physical sex. It just involves using that energy and moving it through the chakras. It's really, really powerful. But I felt, look, when I was working with this, you know, one of the things is when you're working with master plants is everybody says to you, don't think about sex, you know, because it conflicts with the master plant. And so I was a bit like, I had a bit of trepidation about doing the tantric work. So I decided, you know, maybe I'm not going to do that. So I decided just to focus on the energy of the plant. And then what happened is, so I started thinking, so usually what I'll do is I'll start working with my fingers, first of all, when I do the energy. And then move the energy up and down each finger. And then I'll move it through my hands and my arms and this kind of stuff. So this time what I did is I started doing the same thing, but I was thinking about purple energy. And, you know, I've had so many visions, it's difficult to remember them all. But, like, I had these amazing visions where what was happening was, as I started, like, each of my fingers were turning into shoots of, like, shoots of flowers or buds of a tree. And then at the end of each, finger, little blossoms would open. And the blossoms would open. Now, there is this thing, if you read some of the Tantras or some of the commentary from various gurus on the Tantras, some people believe that chakras is actually like a code word for vagina. Now, that's not really a physical vagina. It's like an energy center, a cosmic energy center. So the whole idea of the lotuses, like the chakra lotuses, is some people interpret that in a sort of sexual way. Although not physically sexual. It's kind of a confusing thing, but it's sort of an energetic thing. So this is the interesting thing. So these flowers open, and I'm immediately making this connection. Oh, it's like, it's kind of going in a sort of but there's like it's a plant sexuality. And of course, plants, a lot of plants are sort of, or what's the word? They're sort of, they have both sexes combined sometimes, right? Some of them, I think, I don't know, right? But like you'll get the stamen and you'll get these different parts of the plant. Anyway, these flowers are opening up in my imagination, but it's highly, highly realistic. At this stage, it's gone beyond like me trying to think about, imagine something. It's just happening by itself. And I'm doing this, and all of a sudden, a swarm of bees, imaginary bees, comes, and they start pulling the pollen from these imaginary blossoms, and then they go off, and I'm watching them make honey from it. And this is a beautiful process, because actually what it is the bees are involved in the sexual reproduction of plants. I mean, it's just such a stunning, to be able to be involved in that circuit of, or to be able to observe that circuit of reproduction. It was just amazing, you know? And so various things like this have happened. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm wrapping things around my fingers, because what's happening is the shoots are like wrapping around, and they start wrapping around my arms. And at the same time, my mind's drifting, because like I've been thinking a lot about this Norse mythology stuff, and Odin and Thor, and how the whole Midgard and Asgard and all this stuff works. And so what happens is from time to time you're sort of focused on these visuals. But what happens is you get these sort of metaphorical connections. So, for example, at one point there was a sprout going around like my hand or my finger. I can't remember what it was. But then suddenly I started thinking it was like the leather strap around a sword. And then the sword became like the sword of like Odin or something. And then all of a sudden like things get sort of misty and magical, and a triangle, a big sort of triangle opens up in front of me, a sort of white illuminated triangle, which I'm able to enter within. Now, I'm actually conflating a couple of different visions here. There were several visions about this kind of stuff, so I'm sort of mixing them together here because it's difficult to remember the order. So as I enter into this space, I end up in Asgard, and Asgard is like the heaven of the Vikings, I guess. But it's represented to me in a very abstract way. It's kind of there's so many things I'm missing out here. It's kind of done like line artwork. It's almost like lines. Like, so there's a castle, but the castle is made of sort of white glowing lines. It's almost like magically illuminated. And I should say, before I saw the triangle, before I got the triangle, there was a rainbow which came out. Now, you need to be, there's like a crossover point here between the imagination and knowledge. So I know a little bit about this, and I know that the path to Asgard is Bifrost, and Bifrost is the rainbow bridge. Now, some people think that the rainbows are actually, a rainbow is multicolor, that those are actually the energy of the chakras, and that by resonating the color energy with specific runes, that you can enter into this space. And there's some sort of corollary here with, it's not corollary, but there's an analogy here with, like, for example, Odin. See, Odin supposedly found the runes, and the runes, much like in the Bible, God was the Word and the Word was God. That's what the runes are too. And Odin discovered the runes. And And there's some connection, or not connection, but there's an analogy to maybe with Kali, because she's got the 50 Sanskrit letters around her head in the form of 50 human skulls. So there's sort of these sort of analogies you can sort of find between these sort of different traditions. So I crossed the Bifrost Bridge and went into Asgard, is what I'm saying. Now, as I got in there, I've been reading a few books on this, and one of the things somebody was saying is they were saying that Odin, or they were saying that in J.R.R. Tolkien's works of the Lord of the Rings, that Gandalf had actually been based on Odin. And there's like a whole bunch of supporting evidence for this. It's really obvious that that's what it was. And so I was a big fan of the Lord of the Rings as a child, you know, and I was a big fan of the films and all that kind of stuff. So as I'm moving into this space, my mind starts going to the Lord of the Rings, you know, which ties in. I mean, it's the whole mythology and of the Vikings and the magic. And so I wind up thinking, you know, I get caught up like with Gandalf, and I go off on this huge vision quest with Gandalf, and then I get caught up in Tolkien's mind. And it all comes back to Shihuahuacu, which is interesting, because what happens is, as you may know, in the Lord of the Rings, there's a group of characters called the Ents, and the Ents are the tree intelligence of the forest. And as I was flying through Tolkien's mind in this vision, all of a sudden I came to the Ents and how Tolkien became aware of the majestic tree intelligence through magic. So I don't know if Tolkien was involved in magic, but there was some kind of... that was the message. Was Tolkien was somehow involved, and you know, it's pretty clear he's involved in magic. All his books were about magic and writing with runes. I mean, if he didn't know about magic, he was sure more involved with it than I am and everybody else. I mean, he created his own language and he was pretty involved with the imaginary world, and that is magic. So it was really fabulous, you know, really fabulous. Now around this time, what happened is I've been having this pain in my head, and I had a really massive ear infection. I still got it a bit, and so I went to the doctor, and they gave me a bunch of medicine. And of course, the deal is you know, doing medicine with a sacred tree like Shiwawaku can be dangerous, you know. But I'd already been taking it for a few days, and I needed antibiotics because I'm really in pain, you know, and so I didn't really know how to deal with this. So what I did was I went into meditation, because what I was finding is when I went into meditation, I could connect to the plant. Now the plant, you've kind of got to go meet it. The plant is it's sort of standoffish. It doesn't show you the power unless you go seek it out, and it's quite standoffish, you know. Like for a couple of days, like I think on the third day we had a huge lunch here, and we had a big lunch, and I ate some chicken, and potatoes, and there was an apple pie, and I ate a lot of food, and it was all good. There was no problems with Shihuahuacu, but the messages, it died down. It sort of stepped away for a while. It just stepped away, and less messages came through. It was just very graceful and subtle and not vindictive, although it can be if it wants to be. I mean, it's got more power than you can imagine, Shihuahuacu. And so, anyway, so I went into meditation, and I spoke to the plant. I'm like, listen, I'm really suffering. I got to take antibiotics. I'm like, please don't get crazy on my ass, because I've had run-ins with other plants, you know, where they backfire. And so I asked the plant to take it easy on me, and I started taking the antibiotics, and there was no problem. Hallelujah. So I've been taking antibiotics for 4 days. And of course I was thinking, you know, I better not take Shihuahuacu during this period, you know. But then I thought, you know, I'm going to take it. I'm going to try it and see what happens, because it's responding well, and it's not giving me hassle, and it seems to understand like what I'm going through, and I've explained the process, and so I kept taking it. And so I've had a bunch more of just incredible experiences, just every single day. It's difficult to explain all of them, but I'll end with this because it's quite a long video. Yesterday I took quite a lot, because I've been taking like 3 or 4 drops a day, but the last few days, yesterday I took like 10 drops or something like that, and it's supposed to be like 12 drops a day, but yesterday I took 12 drops, and And I also, the antibiotics and everything. And, I didn't really feel anything. But what happens is from time to time, you get these moments. You get moments. So like 2 days ago, I was sitting at the dining room table just over here, and I suddenly saw a deer. Now this was very subtle, but I saw a deer like in front of me. Like it was sort of up in the distance in the wall. And all of a sudden, this panorama opened up. It was like a panorama of the forest or the jungle. And I saw this deer jumping, and it was like 180 degrees in a circle around me. And it was very subtle. It wasn't like real, 100% real. It wasn't full HD. It was very light, but it was there. And I'm like, wow, the Shihuahuaco is here, It's really subtle. It's is doing stuff. Oh, and also one other thing is in the first day, like the day after those visions of Jesus, when I woke up the next day, it taught me an Icaros. It was so amazing. And the Icaros, it was so involved. And I lay in bed for like 30 minutes trying to memorize the Icaros. And it was amazing. But then what happened is my daughter came in and she was coughing and she was sick. And we had to take her to the doctors. And because everybody's sick here, it's winter. And I forgot the Icaros. And it was the most amazing, detailed Icaros. It was so awesome. And I lost it. Anyway, this ties into where I'm going. So, yesterday too, I took quite a lot of the Shiwawaku, and I wasn't really feeling much. I sort of felt something, but I didn't really feel much. And then, what happens? I took my medicine last night. I took 1,000 milligrams of amoxicillin, and I took a paracetamol because my head's been killing me. It's terrible, just with the pain from the ear infection. And I've had no run-ins with Shihuahuaco at all. It's been great. And so I did this last night, and what happens is like the pressure in my head's been so intense that I just feel like I need to sleep immediately. When I take the medicine, it's like I just want to sleep. But I'm like, oh man, I get stuff to do. I can't sleep. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I thought I'll take a little bit of rapé, and the rapé will wake me up. So I took a tiny, tiny little drop. I'm like, tiny, tiny drop. Take a little bit of rapé, and it wakes me up. I feel great. I'm like, great. I thought I'll just have a shower. I'll have a shower. And that'll be me. I'll be ready to. I got to do homework with the kids and stuff, So I go into the shower, and I'm in the shower, and I'm singing some song. I'm singing a song I wrote in high school with a band I was in, and I remember I had this guitar solo in the song, which at the time was kind of lame. So I'm in the shower, and I'm reimagining how I would play the guitar solo if I could play it today, And so I'm just thinking through this melody, and the melody that's coming through my mind, it's so intricate and beautiful. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, where's this coming from? And I'm like, wait a minute, this is Shiwawaku. This is getting informed by Shiwawaku. And so I put my consciousness on the melody, and I start moving around. It's like an arpeggio. I'm moving up this arpeggio, like up through the chords, and then I'm coming up. I play guitar, so I'm going up, like down in the lower register, going up the E string to the high registers, and then coming up through an arpeggio up there, and I'm coming up down there, and that's when I have the breakthrough. So all of a sudden, this melodic line, which I'm imagining, sort of comes out visually in the real world, and it like rents asunder reality. It like cuts a hole in reality, and the whole of the jungle emerges. It's just like I'm in the shower, and all of a sudden, I can just see the whole jungle around me, and my melody is just part of, it's been created by Shihuahuaco. And it was amazing. And there was like jaguars and parrots and all these animals. And it was like an ayahuasca trip, but it was in the shower. But it was the same kind of power. I don't know, maybe you've had this. If you've been in an ayahuasca ceremony and you had to go to the bathroom, and you go to the bathroom, you're outside, you're sort of away from the ceremony, you're away from the shamans, and you're in the bathroom, you're like, okay, it's normal. I'm back to normal, right? And then all of a sudden, you're not normal. It's like you're multidimensional, and you're in like 6 different dimensions at the same time. You can see spirits, you can see the whole thing. And that's what happened last night in the bathroom. I'm like, whoa. It was amazing. It wasn't scary. It was beautiful. It was scary in its power. Because, Shihuahuaco is very, it doesn't flaunt its power. It doesn't flaunt its power. But you see, I took the rapé, and the tobacco connected me to the spirit instantly, just boom. And so I went looking for the spirit, and I found it. It was the most Shihuahuaco is the most majestic, wise. I don't want to say it's the most majestic and wise, because obviously Tortuga is wise, Bob and Stan is wise. They're all wise, but there's something about Shihuahuaco. It's just because it's so nice. It's so nice, and it's so reserved. It's so reserved. It's like, I've got a friend who's all this, like, up in the States, and he's like he's a smart guy, but he's very reserved, conservative guy, and he's kind of it's kind of like Shihuahuaco. Shihuahuaco's like, it doesn't give you much advice, but when it does, listen to the advice, because it's brilliant. It's just a brilliant plant. It's a plant which teaches magic. It's taught me various magical themes, and it's a plant, if you wanted to, you could abuse it. You could take it to different realms. And, I've just been saying, because, it's tempting. So what I've been doing is I just keep repeating, just medicine. I only want medicine, nothing else. If you're going to teach me anything, teach me about medicine and nothing else. Thank you. And trying to respect the space. Now, over the course of the week, I have been working with my energy work every day too. And I was able to go back into the tantric energy work, and there was no problems, Of course, tantric energy work, it sounds like sexual, but it's not. The thing is, usually when people think about sex, the kind of sex they warn you against during plant dietas is desirous stuff. Whereas the kind of stuff I'm doing is not really based. It's sort of reorienting that into some different direction. It's like a different sort of thing. So it doesn't seem to have a conflict. It gets really, really powerful. I did it this morning, and the power generation, and it's sort of mixing. It becomes mixed with the plant. Now, I'm really worried about Shihuahuaco. It's the most over-harvested plant in the Amazon. 900,000 cubic meters in the last year or something were harvested of this tree by mainly Chinese companies for furniture. They use it as a substitute for teak because you don't have to preserve the wood. It's so perfect. It's such a wise and powerful plant, and people have no idea what they're throwing away. Because if you look at like the wisdom of Tolkien, or the fantasy of Tolkien, and how he talked about the trees and the forests had personalities, and it seems like a fantastic idea, and too bad that's not true. It is true. The problem is that humans, especially humans today, are too stupid and too self-centered to take the time to understand what's going on. I don't know. I just feel like something needs to protect. These plants are they're so vastly superior to humanity. This plant is so divine. It's a divine plant. And they're so vastly superior to anybody I know. And surely, and they're kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, at the end of Star Wars. He just bows as they slice him down, and that's his role. And these plants sort of do the same thing, but they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to do that, They're so wonderful. So I don't know. I feel called somehow to try and do something, to try and help them, or to put in effort, to put in work, to try and save the forests. Today when I was doing energy work, I kept getting imagery of hugging the trunk of the tree. And as I hugged the trunk of the tree, there was just this energy coming out towards me. There was this energy just coming out and bathing me in this love, and it was really nice, really nice energy. So, I'm turning into a tree hugger apparently, and which is cool, because it's true love, They're beautiful, beautiful plants. So there you go. That's my little report on Shihuahuaco, one of the most important trees in the Amazon. And if you try it, you may find it's one of the most important trees you ever try in your life.